The sun never set in the Badlands anymore, at least, that's how it felt. The heat clung to the earth like a fever that refused to break. Wind carried the taste of ash and rust through the hollow remains of a once thriving border city, now nothing more than a graveyard of steel and dust. Sergeant Mason Harlow tightened his grip on his rifle as he scanned the endless horizon. The air shimmered with heat distortion, twisting reality into a trembling mirage. His team moved behind him, 5 soldiers who looked less like warriors and more like ghosts. The war had ended months ago, but out here, peace was just another lie. Command said there were supplies left in the ruins of Sector 9, Private Ellis muttered, wiping sweat from his face. Feels like a setup to me. Harlow didn't respond. His jaw clenched. The man had seen ambushes, traps, and false promises before. But this silence was worse than anything. No birds. No insects. No engines. Just the wind whispering through the bones of the world. They passed burned-out vehicles half buried in sand. Blackened skeletons still sat behind cracked windshields, mouths open in eternal screams. The air smelled faintly of oil and decay. Corporal Reyes walked beside him, eyes darting between ruined buildings. "This place gives me the creeps," she said softly. "You ever notice how the desert feels, watched?" Harlow didn't answer again. Because he had noticed. For the past hour, his instincts had been gnawing at him, something unseen was tracking them. Not human. Too patient. Too precise. He glanced up at the jagged cliffs rising to their right. The rock formations looked almost sculpted, streaked with old blast marks. In the distance, the sky darkened unnaturally, though there were no clouds, just the faint shimmer of heat and static, like the world itself was glitching. Then came the sound. A faint click-click-click. Too deliberate to be natural. "Hold," Harlow hissed, raising a fist. The team froze. Every heartbeat felt like thunder in the silence. Reyes squinted through her visor. "What was that?" "Echo," Ellis whispered, trying to convince himself. But Harlow knew better. The sound came from above, bouncing off the rocks in a rhythm that didn't belong to any living creature. He motioned for the group to move into cover behind the rusted hull of a tank half swallowed by sand. A shimmer passed in the distance, barely perceptible, like light bending where it shouldn't. The air moved, yet there was nothing there. Private Cole, the youngest of the unit, pointed his scope toward the motion. "I'm picking up movement," he said. "Something's cloaked." "Cloaked." Reyes scoffed, forcing a laugh. "You think it's one of ours?" Cole's voice dropped. "No. The heat signature is wrong. It's cold." A wave of static rolled across their comms, sharp, distorted crackles that made every radio sputter. Then, through the interference, came a sound that froze them all. A guttural snarl, low and animalistic, yet disturbingly intelligent. The team fanned out, weapons ready. Dust swirled violently as a sudden gust of wind swept through the ruins. Then something hit. A blur of motion crashed into Private Ellis, slamming him to the ground. His scream was short, cut off by a sickening crack. When Harlow turned, all he saw was blood sprayed across the sand, and half of Ellis's torso twitching. Reyes opened fire. The bullets tore through the air, sparks flying off metal. For a split second, the camouflage broke, the silhouette of something massive, humanoid but distorted, flickered into view. Mandibles flared. Eyes glowed faintly yellow beneath a curved mask. Then it vanished again. "Jesus Christ!" Reyes shouted. "What the hell was that?" "Move!" Harlow barked. "Into the wrecks, now!" They scrambled toward the remnants of an old refinery. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and old blood. Harlow's breathing was harsh in his helmet. He looked at his motion tracker, nothing but static. Then came the clicking again, this time closer. Right outside the walls. Cole trembled, clutching his rifle. It's hunting us. Reyes shook her head, whispering, "No, no, that's not possible. They're gone. Those things don't exist." Harlow's voice was steady, but cold. "They do now." Something heavy landed on the roof with a thud. Dust rained down. A shadow moved along the broken skylight, four-legged, scanning. Then, through a shaft of fading sunlight, Harlow caught a glimpse of something grotesque, a skull hanging from a chain, human and alien fused together, still dripping with blackened fluid. His heart sank. This wasn't a ghost story. This was a graveyard, and they were standing in its center. Outside, the clicking grew faster. Louder. Closer. The hunt had begun again. And in the Badlands, the hunters had evolved. The night in the Badlands wasn't dark. It was red, bleeding from the dying sun and glowing faintly from fires that never seemed to go out. The desert floor shimmered under the distant flames of old oil wells still burning, silent memorials to a war no one remembered winning. Sergeant Harlow crouched behind a crumbling refinery wall, pulse thundering in his ears. The sound of clicking echoed in the distance, faint but deliberate, like something savoring the moment between heartbeats. Private Cole sat across from him, shaking. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated, mouth dry. It lifted him like a rag doll, Sarge. Ellis didn't even have time to scream. It just tore him apart. Harlow's hand tightened on his rifle. "Quiet," he ordered. "If it can hear us, we're done." Reyes peeked out a narrow hole in the concrete. The desert outside looked empty, calm even, but that calm was a lie. Every shadow looked like it was breathing. Every flicker of light felt like a predator's gaze. "Sir," she whispered. "Whatever that thing is, it's playing with us." Harlow nodded grimly. "Yeah. And it knows this place better than we do." The refinery had once processed crude oil, now it was a tomb of rust and soot. Old machinery groaned with the wind. Chains swung from the ceiling, clinking like ghostly chimes. Harlow scanned the shadows, trying to control the rising dread clawing at the back of his mind. The last war had broken him. But this was something different. The thing out there wasn't human, and it wasn't fighting for land, or politics, or survival. It hunted for pleasure. Suddenly, the radio on his shoulder hissed to life, static, then a faint voice. "Low, Harlow, come in. Do you copy?" It was Captain Yates, their commanding officer. Relief hit him like a drug. "Copy that, Command," Harlow whispered. "We're pinned down at the refinery. Something's out here, something not human." A pause. Then Yates' voice came back, distorted. "We know. Satellite picked up irregular heat signatures, non-terrestrial. Evac team is en route. Hold your position." Before Harlow could respond, the radio burst into static again, then, faintly, click 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 click. The same sound as before, mimicking human speech. Cole's face drained of color. "It's on our channel." Reyes turned to Harlow, her voice trembling. "It's listening to us, isn't it?" Harlow didn't answer. He just looked toward the shattered refinery door, where the desert wind whispered like a dying breath. Then, from outside, came a faint metallic clang. Something had moved. Something heavy. Reyes raised her rifle toward the doorway. "Sarge!" The ceiling exploded. A massive shape dropped through the metal roof, landing in a crouch amid a storm of sparks and dust. The shockwave threw Cole against the wall. Harlow barely managed to stay on his feet. It was there. The creature. 8 feet tall. Muscular, armored in a strange mesh that shimmered like liquid metal. Mandibles clicked rhythmically. Beneath its mask, leaking a faint mist that smelled like burning ozone. In one hand, it held a long spear tipped with what looked like human bone. Reyes opened fire, screaming. Bullets sparked against its armor. The predator turned, its head jerking slightly, as if amused. Then, faster than thought, it moved. It vanished. Reyes spun, scanning wildly. Where the hell? A shimmer appeared behind her. Then a flash of claws. A wet, choking sound. Blood sprayed across the wall. Reyes' body dropped, twitching, her eyes wide with shock. Her head rolled a few feet away, her mouth still open mid-scream. Cole sobbed. "We can't fight that." Harlow grabbed him by the vest and yanked him behind a generator. "Shut up and move." They crawled through the narrow maintenance shaft, the metal walls slick with years of oil and grime. Behind them, the predator's footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, confident. Harlow could hear its breathing, mechanical, rhythmic. It wasn't chasing. It was herding. They reached the far exit, bursting out into the open air. The desert stretched endlessly before them, glowing red under the burning sky. Then the sand moved. At first, Harlow thought it was the wind. But then he saw it, the ground was pulsing. The dunes trembled as if something massive was crawling beneath. Cole froze. "Sarge!" The sand erupted in front of them. A second creature rose from the earth, this one even larger. Its armor was cracked and scarred, its mask adorned with the skulls of creatures Harlow couldn't recognize. Two predators. Working together. Harlow's heart slammed against his ribs. "Run!" They sprinted toward the wreckage of an old convoy truck, gunfire echoing uselessly in the open. The creatures didn't rush, they followed, circling, clicking to each other in strange, insect-like patterns. Communicating. Cole tripped, screaming as one of the creatures hurled its spear. The weapon pierced his chest and pinned him to the sand like a broken doll. Harlow turned back, firing until his clip emptied. But the predator barely flinched. It tilted its head, studying him like a scientist might study a specimen. Then, with one deliberate gesture, it tore the spear free from Cole's body and licked the blood from its claws. Harlow backed away, trembling. The sand beneath his boots was red now, soaked through. The Badlands were bleeding. And he finally understood why no one ever came back from here. The desert night screamed. Wind howled through the dunes, carrying the echoes of dying men and burning machines. Sergeant Mason Harlow stumbled through the wreckage, lungs aching, vision blurred by dust and blood. Behind him, the clicking, that horrible, rhythmic clicking, never stopped. It followed like a pulse. Like death itself was keeping time. His boots sank into the sand, each step heavier than the last. His weapon was nearly empty. His squad was gone. The refinery burned behind him, its flames lighting the wasteland like a funeral pyre. He was alone in a land of bones. He didn't know where he was going, just away. But in the Badlands, there was no such thing. He reached an old overpass, half collapsed, stretching over a dried-up riverbed. Rusted vehicles sat beneath it, their frames twisted, half buried in sand. He crawled under the largest one and pressed his back against the metal. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He clutched his rifle and listened. For a moment, there was only silence. Then came the soft crunch of footsteps on sand. Slow. Heavy. Measured. He peered out through a jagged hole in the metal. The darkness moved like liquid. The air shimmered faintly, the heat distortion that wasn't heat. Something cloaked was out there, scanning. Searching. Harlow's breath caught. He didn't move. Didn't blink. The air shimmered again, and for half a second, he saw it. The predator. It stood in the open, facing the burning refinery. Flames reflected off its mask, half metal, half bone. Its armor pulsed faintly with crimson veins of light, as if alive. Its head turned, scanning the ruins. Then its gaze shifted. Toward him. Harlow froze. The creature tilted its head, and the mask lenses brightened with a low hum. A red beam cut through the air and stopped, right on his chest. A targeting laser. Harlow bolted. He rolled from beneath the wreck and sprinted into the open, diving just as a plasma blast tore through the ground where he'd been. Sand exploded upward in a flash of blue light. He ran for the cliffs, lungs burning. The predator's shots missed him by inches, searing holes through the sand and rock. Every impact sounded like thunder. He dove behind a dune and stayed low. The air shimmered again. The clicking grew louder. It was close. Harlow's fingers brushed the ground, and felt something metal. He glanced down. A half-buried skeleton, its ribs fused to a tattered uniform, clutched a long, black case. Military grade. He pried it open. Inside was a shoulder-mounted missile launcher, old tech, but functional. He loaded it with trembling hands, locked the target, and waited. The sound came again. Click 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 click. He fired. The missile streaked through the night, leaving a trail of smoke. It hit, exploding in a shower of fire and sand. The blast threw him backward, heat washing over him. Silence. Then the air shimmered once more. The creature stepped out of the smoke, limping slightly, armor scorched but intact. Its mask was cracked now, exposing part of its face. Black blood dripped from its mandibles. It was angry. And that made it faster. Harlow ran again, crashing through the ruins of an old convoy. He ducked behind a wreck, but the predator was already there. It tackled him, slamming him into the sand so hard his vision blurred white. Up close, the stench was unbearable, metal, blood, and decay. The predator leaned close, mandibles clicking in amusement. Its yellow eyes glowed beneath the cracked mask. Then it spoke. A garbled, distorted voice, replaying his own words from earlier, in perfect mimicry. Hold your position, hold your position. It was mocking him. Harlow screamed, driving a knife into the exposed flesh of its thigh. Black blood hissed where it touched the sand. The predator roared, throwing him several feet away. He landed hard, ribs cracking. His vision dimmed. The creature advanced, slow and deliberate. Each step was a death sentence. Its shadow loomed over him, blotting out the burning sky. Then, something moved behind it. A second shimmer. Another predator. But this one was different, its armor smoother, darker, its movements sharper. The first creature turned toward it, issuing a guttural snarl. The newcomer replied with a deep rumble, like distant thunder. The air between them vibrated. They began to circle each other. Harlow realized the truth in horror. They weren't allies. They were rivals. This was their hunting ground, and he was caught in the middle of their war. He crawled backward, heart hammering. The two beasts clashed in a storm of violence, plasma sparks, roars, blades flashing in the firelight. One slammed the other into the sand, crushing rocks beneath its weight. The other retaliated, slicing open its enemy's chest with twin wrist blades. Harlow used the chaos to crawl into the shadows of a collapsed fuel rig. He watched, trembling, as the stronger of the two finally drove its spear through the other's chest. The dying predator roared, gurgled, then collapsed, bleeding black into the sand. The victor knelt over it, pulling off its mask. It looked up at the stars for a long moment before raising the fallen creature's skull and spine, tearing them free with one brutal motion. Then, with a low growl, it turned toward Harlow. Their eyes met. And in that instant, Harlow understood what true terror was, not death, but recognition. It knew him. The predator stared for a long, silent moment, then slowly pointed at him, as if marking him. A declaration. A challenge. Then it vanished into the shimmering dark. The desert went silent again. And somewhere deep within that silence, the sand began to bleed once more. The desert had gone silent again, so silent that even Harlow's breathing felt too loud. He stumbled through the dunes under a bruised red sky, dragging his injured leg behind him. The wind had died, and the air tasted of burnt copper and smoke. Somewhere behind him, buried beneath the endless sand, lay the refinery, a mass grave burning in the night. His calm was dead. His water was gone. His sanity was slipping. Every shadow twitched. Every whisper of wind sounded like that clicking. The predator hadn't killed him when it could have. It had marked him. A hunted man. A chosen prey. He reached the edge of what had once been a city, a ghost town swallowed by the desert. Cracked skyscrapers jutted from the sand like black teeth. The windows were shattered, the streets filled with skeletons of old machines and half-buried corpses. Graffiti still clung to crumbling walls, "No gods, no masters. No mercy." Harlow ducked into a collapsed parking garage. The stench inside was unbearable, fuel, rot, and something older. The deeper he went, the darker it became. His flashlight flickered, the beam barely cutting through the thick air. He found bodies there, dozens of them. Not fresh. But not old enough to have turned to dust. Their bones were clean. Stripped. Piled. Arranged. He froze. This wasn't a random massacre. It was a display. Trophies. The walls were etched with deep claw marks, strange symbols, circles intersecting with jagged lines. He'd seen similar symbols in the ruins of the refinery. Now they pulsed faintly under his light, glowing red like veins beneath skin. He stepped closer. The air temperature dropped instantly. His breath came out in white puffs. Then something behind him clicked. Harlow spun, weapon raised. Nothing. Just darkness. But then, movement. A shimmer in the corner, bending light unnaturally. He backed away slowly. "You're not real," he whispered, voice shaking. "You're not." The light flickered again. The shimmer solidified. And there, at the edge of the dark, a shape took form, taller than a man, bulkier, its mask glowing faintly in the dark. The predator stood watching him silently. But this one was different. Its armor was crude, ancient-looking. Its mask was cracked down the middle, and in one hand, it held a human skull carved with alien runes. Another joined it. Then another. 3 of them. Standing in the shadows like gods of war. Harlow's knees nearly buckled. What the hell? They didn't move. They just watched. Then one of them raised its wrist device and pressed something. The walls around him began to glow brighter, those same runes burning through the concrete. Harlow realized with dawning horror that they weren't in a human structure anymore. The garage had been built over something older. The symbols, they weren't graffiti. They were coordinates. This was no random battleground. It was an ancient hunting ground. And the predators had returned to reclaim it. Harlow stumbled backward, desperate to escape. He fired wildly, bullets sparking off the walls. The figures didn't flinch, they simply cloaked again, vanishing into the darkness. Silence. He turned to run. And nearly tripped over a corpse. Except this one was new. A woman. Civilian clothes. Eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-scream. Around her neck hung a military tag, U.S. Research Division. A notebook lay beside her, its pages soaked in blood. He picked it up, hands trembling. The writing was frantic, almost illegible. The Badlands were once a crash site. We uncovered something buried beneath the sands. Not human. The radiation wasn't from bombs, it was from their ship. The hunters came back for it. They don't just kill. They harvest. They evolve. The last words were smeared, but still readable. They're not alone. A sudden roar shook the air. The sound reverberated through the concrete, deeper, heavier than before. The walls vibrated. Dust rained from above. Then, a shadow passed over him, massive, winged, alien. Through a hole in the roof, Harlow looked up just in time to see it. A ship. It was enormous, black as night, descending silently. The air shimmered as it broke through the atmosphere, sand spiraling upward around it. It wasn't sleek like human crafts, it was grotesque, grown rather than built, its hull moving like it was alive. The three predators below him turned toward it and kneeled. Worshipping. Harlow's mouth went dry. His hands shook so badly the flashlight fell. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a hunt anymore. It was an invasion. A deep, guttural voice echoed through the ship's descent, like thunder cracking through bone. And for the first time, Harlow understood the horrible truth: these creatures had been here before, thousands of years ago. Humanity hadn't evolved in their absence. Humanity had survived because they had allowed it. He stumbled backward, running for the surface. The air outside was vibrating now, a low hum that rattled his bones. The dunes glowed faintly under the descending ship's shadow. Then came the first explosion. A plasma blast ripped through the ground behind him, flinging him forward. He landed face first in the sand, coughing blood. When he looked up, he saw figures rising from the dunes, not all alien. Some were human. Or at least, they used to be. Bodies twisted, flesh fused with alien metal, eyes burning orange. They twitched and clicked like broken machines. The predators' experiments. They weren't alone. Harlow scrambled to his feet and ran into the howling dark, heart hammering, mind breaking. Behind him, the desert screamed again. And above it all, that terrible ship hung over the wasteland like a black sun. Marking the beginning of something far worse than the hunt. The desert had changed. It wasn't just dead anymore, it was alive. The sand pulsed faintly beneath Harlow's boots as he ran through the wasteland. Each step felt like running over buried machinery, something deep beneath the surface was moving, breathing. The sky had turned an oily black, the stars blotted out by the hulking silhouette of the alien ship that hovered low over the dunes. Lightning crawled through the clouds above it, veins of crimson fire illuminating its jagged, biomechanical surface. The sound it made wasn't mechanical at all, it was organic, like 1,000 voices whispering from within its hull. Harlow's lungs burned. His vision blurred. His leg throbbed with pain from the earlier fight, but adrenaline kept him going. He didn't dare stop. He followed the flickering light of a flare in the distance, a sign of human life, maybe, or a trap. Either way, it was better than being alone in the open. When he reached it, he found the remains of an outpost, barricades, tents, and burned-out vehicles. Bullet holes riddled everything. The sand was blackened and sticky with blood. Then he heard something. A faint sobbing. Human. He raised his rifle and moved cautiously between the wrecks until he saw her, a woman, sitting in the sand, clutching her knees, whispering to herself. Her uniform was shredded, and her skin was streaked with dried blood. She was muttering the same words over and over. They said it was just reconnaissance, they said it was just an old ruin, they lied. Harlow knelt in front of her. Hey. You're safe now. What happened here? She looked up at him, her eyes glassy and unfocused. Safe, she whispered. Then she smiled, a broken, trembling smile. There's no safe here. Not in their ground. He felt a chill run down his spine. How long have you been out here? Long enough to hear them talk, she said. Long enough to see them change. Before he could ask more, she suddenly went rigid. Her head snapped upward, eyes wide in terror. They're here. The clicking started again. It came from everywhere, echoing off the broken metal, bouncing through the dunes. Multiple sources. Surrounding them. Harlow grabbed her hand. "We have to move." But she wouldn't get up. She was staring at something behind him. He turned. At first, it looked like a dune shifting in the wind. Then the sand collapsed inward, forming a crater, no, a hole. The ground was opening up. The woman began to scream, clawing at the earth as if trying to hold herself in place. The sand beneath her gave way, and she fell. Harlow dove after her without thinking. He slid down into the darkness, sand pouring around him. The air grew cold and wet. His flashlight flickered as he landed hard at the bottom. What he saw made his mind reel. He was standing in a massive underground chamber, walls made of bone and metal fused together. Every surface was carved with those same alien runes, glowing faintly red. The air smelled like blood and rot. In the center of the chamber was a pit. A pit of skulls. Thousands of them, human, animal, and things he couldn't identify. Some still had spinal cords attached, dangling like grotesque vines. Others were carved with symbols, polished like trophies. The woman's body lay at the edge, broken. Her eyes were open, staring up in horror. Harlow stepped closer, trembling. That's when he saw movement. Beneath the pile of skulls, something shifted. The bones clattered softly, then began to rise. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then he saw it, tendrils of black liquid oozing between the skulls, pulling them together. The bones twisted, fused, and formed into a shape, a monstrous imitation of life. A skeletal construct, half organic, half machine. A predator trophy brought to life. The creature towered over him, its skull face stretching into a grin that wasn't human. Red light burned behind its hollow eyes. It clicked once, then spoke, in broken human mimicry. "Run, Hunter." Harlow backed away, firing until his rifle clicked empty. The bullets shattered bone, but the thing didn't stop. It moved like a puppet dragged by invisible strings, each motion jerky and wrong. He turned to flee, but the wall behind him wasn't a wall anymore. The metal pulsed and opened like a wound, revealing a corridor lined with hanging bodies, humans, soldiers, civilians, all impaled on hooks. Their heads had been replaced with helmets, predator helmets, wired into the walls like living sensors. As he passed, their eyes flickered open. Every one of them looked at him. A sound rolled through the chamber, low, deep, and ancient. It wasn't the roar of one predator. It was the collective sound of many. From the shadows emerged figures, predators of different kinds, shapes, and armor styles. Some scarred, some mutilated, all marked with ancient sigils. They stood around the pit, watching him. He realized what the pit was. Not just a grave. Not just a trophy room. A sanctuary. The place where every hunt ended. He dropped to his knees. "Why me?" he whispered. One of the predators stepped forward, its armor black as night, its mask etched with human teeth. It leaned close, mandibles flaring. And then it pressed its clawed hand against his chest, right over his heart. "Because," a voice rasped from its mask, mimicking his own voice again, "you survived." The creature drew back, activating its wrist device. The others began to chant, a terrible clicking rhythm that echoed through the chamber. The skulls in the pit started to glow, one by one, until the entire room pulsed with crimson light. The floor split open beneath him. And as Harlow fell into the pit, surrounded by a storm of screaming skulls and blinding red light, he realized the most horrifying truth of all. He wasn't being hunted anymore. He was being chosen. The world was red. Not just from light or flame, red itself, as if every grain of sand, every molecule of air, was bleeding. Harlow's body lay half buried in the pit, bones cracking as he struggled to breathe. The air was thick and wet, humming with the pulse of something enormous beneath him. He pushed himself up slowly. His skin felt wrong, hot, sticky, almost electric. He wiped his face and saw black blood smeared across his hand. It wasn't all his. The pit was gone. Now he stood in a vast chamber of flesh and metal. The walls moved, contracting rhythmically like the inside of a living creature. Pulses of red light rippled through the structure, revealing shapes fused into the walls, human bodies, predator skulls, strange hybrid things. They twitched occasionally, as if still alive somewhere inside the metal. He staggered forward, boots squelching on the slick floor. Each step made the chamber groan, a deep, organic sound that vibrated in his bones. Something was breathing with him. A voice crackled in his earpiece, faint, static-filled, impossible. "Harlow, you copy?" His breath caught. "Reyes?" "Not Reyes," the voice said. It was distorted, layered, human words forced through an alien throat. "We remember you." He froze. The sound was everywhere, bouncing around the chamber like an echo that had learned to speak. Then the wall in front of him rippled, and opened. From the shadows emerged a predator unlike any he'd seen. Its armor was ancient, rusted and scarred. Its mandibles were cracked, hanging slightly uneven. Its body was covered in markings, some in predator glyphs, others in human letters. Names. Ranks. The thing stepped closer. It carried no weapons. It didn't need them. Harlow raised his rifle, even though he knew it wouldn't matter. His hands shook so hard the barrel wavered. "What the hell are you?" It tilted its head, and its voice came through his comms again. "The next hunt." Then it turned, motioning for him to follow. For reasons he didn't understand, he did. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe he had already crossed the line between sanity and madness, and this was just what came after. The corridor opened into another vast chamber, a hollow space beneath the desert that seemed to stretch for miles. And Harlow saw them. Hundreds of humans, soldiers, scavengers, civilians, all suspended in glassy pods that pulsed with light. Tubes ran from their arms, necks, and skulls into the floor. The liquid inside the pods glowed dark red, shifting with faint movement. Their bodies twitched. Their eyes moved behind their lids. They were alive. Barely. Rows upon rows of them, stretching into the dark. The predator walked to the center of the room and placed its hand on a pulsating column that rose from the floor like a spine. The walls around them lit up. Images flickered in the air, holograms of hunts spanning centuries. Humans hunted. Skulls collected. Wars observed. The creatures had been coming here. Forever. And each time, they didn't just take trophies. They took blood. Not just to mark victory. To study. To replicate. To evolve. Harlow staggered back, shaking his head. "You're breeding them," he whispered. You're using us." The predator looked at him and clicked once, slowly, like affirmation. Then, using its wrist device, it replayed a fragment of human speech, his voice again, recorded during the firefight hours ago. "They've evolved." It nodded. The sound of hissing filled the air as several pods opened. The humans inside collapsed to the floor, their skin gray, their bodies shuddering. But as Harlow watched, their flesh began to move. Veins rippled under their skin, bones shifted, faces stretched. They screamed as their skulls split apart. Their eyes blackened. Their jaws unhinged. Their hands twisted into claws of bone and metal. When the screaming stopped, they stood, half human, half predator. The creatures turned to him, their mandibles twitching. The predator that had led him here stepped aside. It was showing him something. Demonstrating. The next phase of the hunt. One of the hybrids stepped forward, snarling, and Harlow opened fire. Bullets tore into it, but it barely flinched. It lunged, slamming him to the ground. The stench of burning flesh filled the air. Its breath was hot and foul against his face. Before it could strike, Harlow drove his knife into its throat. The creature gurgled, black blood spraying his face, then collapsed. He scrambled to his feet, grabbing the predator's dropped wrist device. He'd seen what it could do: detonate, cloak, overload. He pressed buttons blindly until a shrill alarm began to beep. The predator turned sharply. The chamber lights flickered red. The device began to hum. Harlow ran. The explosion tore through the chamber like a supernova. Pods shattered, releasing clouds of black mist. The walls screamed, a chorus of human and alien voices merging in agony. He sprinted through collapsing tunnels, sand pouring from above. The ground heaved as the ship above shifted violently. When he finally burst back into the open desert, the horizon was burning. The alien craft hung broken in the sky, one side aflame, oozing black smoke. He collapsed to his knees, gasping, staring at the inferno. He'd done it. He'd destroyed their lab. But as the smoke cleared, he saw movement in the flames, silhouettes rising from the wreckage. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. Predators. Hybrids. Shapes that defied reason. All watching him. One by one, they began to click, slowly, rhythmically, perfectly in sync. A sound like applause. Harlow's throat went dry. The wind howled through the wasteland like laughter. He realized the truth far too late. He hadn't escaped the hunt. He had started it. And now, the Badlands would bleed for them all. The desert burned like a fever dream. The sky bled orange and black as firestorms swept across the horizon, eating through the ruins of what was once civilization. The Badlands were no longer dead, they were alive, pulsing with violence. Every echo carried screams, every shadow moved. Harlow stumbled through the wreckage, half blind from smoke and exhaustion. His skin was cracked, his throat dry, his mind flickering between terror and delirium. The wind was filled with the sound of clicking, dozens, maybe hundreds of them, predator calls blending with distorted human voices. They were everywhere. He could see them through the haze, tall shapes cloaked in heat shimmer, their red targeting lasers darting through the fog like hunting eyes. Sometimes they appeared human. Sometimes they looked like nightmares of bone and steel. He reached the old radio tower at the edge of the outpost. It was barely standing, a metal skeleton surrounded by sand and corpses. He climbed, every movement sending knives of pain through his ribs. He reached the top and dragged the transmitter from its housing. Static hissed. Anyone left, anyone, his voice broke into a whisper. They're coming. No answer. Only static, and then, faintly, beneath the noise, the sound of breathing. Who is this? He whispered. A voice came through, distorted, wet, almost inhuman. They hear you. The transmission died. Then, from below, came the sound of metal footsteps. He peered down through the smoke. Dozens of shapes moved among the ruins, some cloaked, others bare and glistening. The hybrids, the new breed. They moved like predators but made sounds like people, half sobs, half laughs. They were mimicking voices. He heard Reyes's scream echo up from below, then Sergeant Cole's laughter. They were dead, he knew that, but the hybrids remembered them. They became them. The clicking grew louder, layered now with whispers, voices speaking English, predator growls beneath every word. Run, run, soldier. Hunt's not over. Become like us. A cloaked figure appeared on the tower behind him. He spun around, knife raised, but it struck faster. A blur of motion, a flash of metal, and his blade clattered away. The creature uncloaked, towering, sleek, black armor glistening like oil. Its mask was smooth, featureless except for a faint red glow pulsing where eyes should be. This one was different. Smarter. Cleaner. The Alpha. Harlow backed against the railing, breath shaking. You want me, he gasped. You want your trophy. The predator tilted its head. Then, it removed its mask. Harlow froze. The face beneath wasn't alien, it was human. Scarred, skin stretched tight, eyes pitch black. The jaw split open in four, metallic mandibles clicking outward. A grotesque fusion of predator and man. Harlow recognized what he was looking at. It wasn't a monster. It was a mirror. The hybrids weren't the end, they were the beginning of a transition. The Badlands were a crucible. Humanity was being reshaped. The predator, the alpha, leaned close, mandibles twitching. Through the earpiece, a faint human voice whispered. You're the last one we need. Then it struck. Harlow fought with everything he had. He drove a broken piece of metal into its chest, ducked under its strike, and activated the stolen wrist device. A blinding flash erupted, throwing both of them off the tower. They hit the ground hard. Harlow's leg shattered. The alpha rose almost immediately, dragging itself from the flames, its skin molten, its armor cracked. It reached for him. He crawled backward, fumbling with the device. It was counting down again, 5 seconds, 4, beeping faster and faster. He laughed bitterly, the sound breaking through blood and tears. Guess this hunt's over, he rasped. He pressed the detonator. A sun bloomed in the heart of the Badlands. The explosion tore through the desert, vaporizing everything for miles. Sand turned to glass. The screams of both man and monster vanished into a single flash of white. Then, silence. Hours later, when the ash began to fall, the desert was still. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. But deep beneath the surface, under layers of scorched glass and ruin, something stirred. A faint hum. A pulse of red light. And the sound of clicking, slow, deliberate, almost patient. Through the darkness, a single holographic projection flickered to life. It showed Harlow's face, his body's vital readings, his DNA sequence, and a single predator glyph below it, flashing repeatedly. The glyph translated to one word. Success. Then, in the static beyond the signal, a voice spoke softly, almost reverently. The hunt never ends. The Badlands glowed faintly as the sun rose again, red and merciless. Something new was being born. Something that was neither human, nor predator. Something that remembered both. And across the wasteland, in the molten glass that used to be sand, hundreds of footprints began to appear, some large, clawed, alien. Some unmistakably human. The hunt had evolved. The world was theirs now.